So feminism is back at it again, this time with a Taylor Swift video. I'm so sick and tired of this subject. I am so sick and tired of this subject, and I didn't even really want to read this article, but I read it because there was one little part, and it was the assumption that I, as a woman, automatically agree with the premise of this. And so I'll save you a lot of the trouble. Give me a second. I'll save you a lot of the trouble of looking up and reading this article. And essentially, it is Taylor Swift did a music video, of course, pretending to be a guy, which is not a new thing at all. And like any feminist, it is the stupidest stereotypes of what feminists believe that masculinity is. And and essentially it's if I were a guy, I'd be able to get away with all these things. And the reality is most of these guys still don't get away with this thing because the only people who praise them and think that what they do is important or lionizes it, I should say, are other feminists. Because I look back at history and I say all the time, there's a reason that the word cad was a thing and it was never seen as a good thing. And same thing with scoundrel. It was never considered a good thing in history. So the behaviors that feminists believe classicalizes, masculinity are the same things that society has never said was good, has never actually highlighted as this is the way that men should behave. So, it's essentially the same. It's the same mess, just a different feminist spouting it. But it kind of fit into a subject that I really wanted to talk about because it reminds me of the whole women in refrigerators argument that Gail Simone made, because it's the same. It is the same kind of thing. That was just her version of this article. The idea that no matter what happens, women will always have it worse. And, and this article even goes on to say, it's dumb, but it's this belief that it's the belief that the whole world falls apart and women are the most affected by it. Now, I finally finished the first volume of Power Man and Iron Fist. And, there was a point where I stopped because I realized, man, there are actual stakes. And that got me to thinking about modern storytelling, because in modern storytelling, you now never have a worry or a concern because there are never any stakes. So this is beside the issue of Power Man losing his power and actually getting shot in the shoulder and bleeding for the first time in a while and almost drowning. But, it basically is they lost people who were close to them. So there's in one of the issues, a bomb went off at the movie theater where Luke Cage lives. And, the projectionist was still in there. And, Luke Cage makes the point of the man had a wife and 3 kids. So it was painful to lose this guy because it was a direct stake, all because someone was trying to get to him. So it sparked him to want to essentially get everyone who was in his life, everyone that he felt close to, get them out of the way, get them to safety. Let me not talk to anyone that I love just in case they get targeted. And because that's what stakes did. Like one of the things that I love about Superman is that people complain about how powered he is and that he's too powerful, therefore that makes him a weak or uninteresting kind of hero. But one of the things I've always found about Superman is the fact that for all the power that he has, he cannot save absolutely everyone. And that is something that gives him a wealth of depth. And I wish that it's something that kind of got played up a little bit more, because it would not just humanize him, but it would add depth to his character. And I think that it would make people actually see, that kind of cross that he has to bear, that, he is the most powerful figure in the DC universe. He has done so many things, but, for all that he has done of saving the big things, there are times where he could still lose individuals. And so, that is really, I think that is one of the things that has made me the saddest about the way that storytelling has gone, because, it's this assumption, and I know people don't do it anymore, because nowadays you can't put women in danger, because feminists will come at you with things like this. Well, you would never do that if it were a man, and they ignore all the men whose lives get lost in the process, because yes, anyone close to you that dies, especially as a hero, immediately provides weight to that hero. And, I think it's one of the arts that kind of really needs to just, it does need to come back. I would say even at the start of DC's Rebirth, because that was played extremely well, because Peter Tomasi addressed it. You had the New 52 Superman who died, and then you had, regular Superman who, because he himself had come back to life with the Doomsday thing, thinking, okay, let me do the same thing for this one, and thinking he could save that Superman. And then having that moment where he realizes that that same technology that he had that brought him back to life, that Superman doesn't have it. So that Superman stays permanently dead, and that having to be a weight now on his shoulders, because he couldn't save someone. And so it sparks in him to have that responsibility and say, okay, now I have to take over for this other Superman. I have to now become the protector that he had been, because they now don't have their Superman anymore. So, and that is a direct thing of, actual stakes. That Superman died doing what he loved. And then, it sparked the other Superman to say, okay, it's time to come out of hiding, because Superman played an incredible role of providing hope and, allowing people to experience what goodness is. And so I guess when I look at articles like this, and I, hear about the silliness of women in refrigerators and things like that, I look at the fact that they've immediately have missed the point. And because of course they do, because it's even, I'll be really honest, because even in reading this article and looking at the videos and things like that, I've been able to tell for a while now that a lot of this feminism thing is really rooted in jealousy, and is rooted in the fact that these women want to be men. And, it was probably a couple of years ago now, and Andrew Clavin said it best, that feminists want to be mediocre men. And that's kind of the point, because the men that they keep pointing out are not really incredible men. The men that they keep pointing out are men that they aspire to be, men that they think have power, men that they think have control, because it is a matter of feeling that jealousy, because, well, this guy, I believe, gets away with this mainly because they allow it, not because society allows it, And so they want to aspire to do it too, because somehow, some way they think that if they break that barrier, it will somehow make them happy, even though it doesn't. And because the reason that many of these men behave the way that they tell us that we like when we don't, is because they're not happy themselves and they're trying to make themselves happy. But I knew it when I saw this part of the article, and it says, if you are a woman, you undoubtedly thought about how much easier life would be if you were a man. Now, I'm a woman, and I can honestly say I've never thought that, because I don't believe that my life would be easier if I were a man, because I don't see a man's life as being easy. I see a man's life as being different. And because I don't mind being different as a woman, I'm not trying to do a man's job. I don't believe that there's a double standard of sexism. And I don't believe that there's just this raging patriarchy that is keeping women down. I think it's this idea of women who want to be men, who want to, who want to be men, but they want that protected status at the same time. Because when I look back to the idea of even the women in refrigerators, and I think about like what we've seen in Captain Marvel and what we saw in Star Wars, it's that thing. You're supposed to see these women as being incredibly powerful, like men, but they're never supposed to actually go through anything. So you lose out on that hero's journey with these women because, you can't ever put the women in danger. You can never actually give them stakes. You can never have a time where the audience, the reader, whoever worries about them. And that becomes a problem. I immediately felt for Power Man when the projectionist died. I mean, because I was just like, they really like, so I'll, I'm going to do a review on that. But in the comic, essentially the bomb goes off and Power Man's friend, DW, is in there. And so DW is in there. The projectionist is in there. The projectionist was in the room. DW was coming out of the room. So when the explosion went off, DW managed, he got hit, but he managed to live. And so, Iron Fist and Power Man were able to rescue DW. And the whole time that they were going through that rescue, I kept thinking, what about the projectionist? What about the other guy? They don't know that guy is in there, because those were the stakes. You were immediately worried because you knew that wasn't, that wasn't a good thing. You knew that it was a death. Same thing with Thunderbolt, because that's another issue, where this young guy, where his body's being the process of his aging is being sped up because he got this power. And so at the end of the issue, he dies, and it's sad because it's stakes, and you want him to have accomplished his goal, which was to find out who was responsible for the death of his younger brother. These are immediately things that hook you in because there are stakes, because it has you understand in your mind that if this doesn't happen, then this will be an outcome. And you want everyone to be safe, but you immediately feel when it doesn't work out the way that you think that it should. And that's really the power of storytelling. And that's really the kind of storytelling that I love. And it's probably why I'm having so much fun going back and reading a lot of this other kind of, these other stories, because of the stakes, because of these things that are happening, because it's keeping you a little bit more on the edge of your seat versus, looking at Carol Danvers in Captain Marvel and seeing her behave like a villain, seeing Kate Bishop as, the fake Hawkeye, because I will call her the fake Hawkeye, where essentially essentially there weren't any stakes. She kind of became a hero because she just wanted to be one, because she wanted to be more powerful. And, and we're supposed to just say, oh yeah, she's better than the other Hawkeye who went through so many things. And yeah, I may not be as passionate about, this article, but I know that I am for sure passionate about the subject of high stakes in storytelling, because it has always been the most interesting part of any story, because it immediately pulls in the emotions. And one of my hopes, and this is kind of why for me personally, I've been pushing back a lot against this sort of progressive ideology that's going on in storytelling, is because I would love to bring stakes back. I would love to be able to say, it doesn't matter if the person who is close to the hero that died is a male or a female. It is the stakes, because, feminists are always going to complain. And that's literally the point. They're always going to complain. They're always going to pick out the few cases where it's just women that it happens to, and they're going to ignore all the men. It's literally how they make everything work, because they do it in real life. They rewrite the rules of reality in order to suit what they believe. But I do believe if you want to make a good story, and I say this to myself as well, there has to be certain stakes. There has to be something that makes you worry about either the hero themselves or the people around the hero, because sometimes bad things need to happen in order for good to come out of it. And, in a story, when you can control a little bit more, the elements around it. Like, I'll give you a great example. There was a book series, and at this point, I forget the name of the book series. I still have it, but I mean, and maybe this is just a condition of the author, period, because there was another book series that she never finished, and that drives me nuts. But she would make you fall in love with characters, and there would be so many great characters, and you would fall in love with them, and then she would kill them off. And so you would have all these characters, because there was no character that was, unkillable. And that's kind of that's masterful storytelling, because that is the point. There shouldn't be that kind of thing. There shouldn't be protection for one kind of group, which is why I don't like the idea of a protected class, because the reality is, if I read a story and I never have to worry about a character because the character is a woman, it's an uninteresting story. If I read a story and I never have to worry because the character is trans, or the character is disabled, or the character is insert identity politics, it's an uninteresting story. And an uninteresting story just doesn't sell. And I'm thinking, because they're talking about this trend of people no longer reading. And I really think a lot of that has to do with the fact that stories have become about nothing nowadays. And I say that because I have a younger cousin who was reading the one of those Diary of a Wimpy Kid issues, and it literally was an issue of a kid who just wanted to sit in his room all day and play video games, and his mom wanted him to go outside and play. That was the story. And I remember myself being a kid I would never have read anything like that because I remember stories being about kids doing things, actually having adventures. And that was fascinating. That was interesting. We now tell kids, don't have adventures. Don't be good people. Don't look outside of yourself. Essentially be a villain that calls yourself a hero because you can do whatever, care only about yourself kind of thing. And I don't want to make this video too much longer, but I do just want to reiterate my point. Having stakes in a story is extremely important. It's extremely important because of the way that it just can hook the reader, the viewer, whatever your creative thing is. It's really the best way to hook the person in. And I'll maintain that because I look at a lot of the failures and, a lot of the failures are because there really haven't been any stakes. And I say that if you're going to do a female character, you probably should definitely push the envelope and have stakes because there has to be a reason for people to want to come in. And they're not going to unless they have a reason to worry. And yeah, that's essentially that. So if you like this, click the like button, click the subscribe button, do the bell stuff for notifications, share this, do all of that, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.